Hi, we are live. This is episode 88 of the Artcasters, which is crazy 88 even. I'm here with Scott Serkland.
How's it going?
And Mike Emirates.
Hello, hello.
Who is one of our, I think we've already explained this, but this show rotates between my channel and Scott's channel, and then we have a rotating third chair, and Mike is a mensch and is one of those awesome folks who's subbing in. So today we wanted to talk about some stuff that relates directly to some stuff that Mike's been experiencing recently. So our topic is called Clients from Hell. So we're going to talk about some just rough experiences with clients and stuff like that, and then probably, meander and ramble a little bit as we usually do on this show. So we got a pretty active chat, so hi to everybody in the chats. And yeah, Mike, what's going on with this Clients from Hell thing?
So should I kind of give a little background on like how it got started and all that? Or
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. Well, all right. So, all right, I'll rewind then, and I'll save the spoiler for later. Then I'll tell the version of the story that was the truth up until a couple days ago. So, anyways, all right. So I got this gig a few years ago. Let's see. It started out. I was in kind of a rough spot in my life, and that tends to be the time when I think most of us take really stupid gigs, I think. And so this opportunity came around for me to work on a stop motion project. It was open-ended. I was kind of brought on after the fact, so it was actually my buddy's project. A really good friend of mine, known the guy for over 10 years. What's not to trust? The guy asked me, hey, you want to be a part of this? Yeah, sure, sounds awesome. And I'm going to get paid? Great. So we started working, and to sum it up, it just turned into a disaster from the start. We didn't have a contract that I knew of. As far as I knew, my buddy was handling pretty much everything. So it was kind of all on him to get us paid and to organize everything. So I was just sort of like the pinch hitter, come in and save the day. And so I just did the work. We did storyboards, we did concept art, we did a bunch of previs stuff, you name it, just tons and tons of work. And we had some trouble getting paid at the start, but we managed to kind of work something out to where the client would pay us a little bit up front for us to be working. So we got working, we got paid a little bit. And then as time went on, my buddy became less and less active to the point where I was actually jumping on other gigs that he was working just to help him out, to help him get done sooner so that he would have more time, because his biggest excuse was, I don't have time. I'm working on this. I'm working on that. So I'm taking other jobs to try to free up my buddy so that he would have time. But the windup was that he just never made the time. So long story short, eventually a couple of years passed, and I finally asked him to just leave the project because it was silly. It was like, if you're not going to do any work at all, then why are we splitting the money? Why are you, even a part of this? And I mean, literally no time, like no work was done. So we parted ways, and it just sort of went south from there. She never wanted to, the client, never wanted to write up a contract. We kind of just moved forward as is, like I'm essentially taking over the role of my buddy. Like, all right, well, now I'm in charge, I've been holding it together this long, I'll finish the thing. And that was probably like my biggest mistake, I think. I should have insisted on writing a contract, because it just went downhill from there. We needed materials to build things, and I wasn't getting any money to pay for the materials. So just to move the project along, I was paying out of pocket. And, to kind of put it into context, it was a really like, there was a lot of, it was one of those exposure type projects.
Yeah.
And not in the sense that the client themselves was pitching it as that, but just who she is, the kind of work she does, the kind of people that she talks to was very exciting to me. To give you one example, there was a day that I had sent her a ton of video and photos of this project, and she was telling me that on her other job, which was another movie that she was working on, that she was showing it around to people on set and that they really dug it too. And two of the people that she showed it to were Jeremy Irons and Tom Hiddleston. So me being the geek that I am, like, what, Loki and Alfred Pennyworth, they're checking out the set? What? Of course I'm going to keep doing this job. I mean, what could possibly come from that? You know, it's going to be amazing. I'm going to make this awesome stop motion and all these cool people are going to see it. And it's all of that was bullshit. None of it's, you know, that was me getting in the way of reality, I think. But it was things like that that kept me stuck on it, kept me feeling like, well, this is an opportunity. So, you know, even though it sucks and I'm not getting paid much, like, let's just keep riding this thing into the ground because this is your big break, you know? And anyways, I could go on and on and on forever, but the wind up is that it really just started killing me. Like, I was getting super depressed again, only this time, you know, it was because of this project. I knew I wanted to be taking my life in a completely different way, and this project was in the way of that. And, you know, the sum of the story is that finally I came to a point where it was time to get working on it again, and I just couldn't. I couldn't even convince myself to do it as a job. It was just, I decided right then and there, like, this has to be done. This just has to be over with. So anyways, that's the short version of this tragic tale.
Yeah, so I think, go ahead.
Josh. You go ahead, Josh.
Cool. So I think like the thing that rings true to me, because I've had bad client experiences, none that lasted that long. But I mean, there's all the telltale signs of like a bad project. To me, like a good sign is like, you know, no contract. That's a huge, because it's like if they're not willing to put in writing your deal, then you don't have a deal, you know. Yeah. Like, and from years of experience at it, it's just like I've learned that the hard way. Like, you need it in writing, and especially because you don't want to end up on that revision hook.
Oh,
like, yeah. You know, the revision trap where it's like you know, don't stipulate in a contract like how many revisions you're allowed to have, and like, I mean, there are certain revisions contractually you should do, like without charge. Like if you don't fulfill the brief, that's a huge thing. You know, if I hire you to draw a pineapple, then you need to draw a pineapple, you know, like that's what I'm paying for. If it's not a pineapple, then, you know, it's like I bought a Toyota and you give me a Ford, you know, like there's legal problems with that. But if you provide it and I'm like, I want it this color and stuff like that, and then I change my mind, like you need a contract, right, to back that up. So that's to me, that's a big red flag, like instantly. Yeah. But I've also fallen for that before, you know, and partially because we're artists, you know, so I think it's like, you're like, well, you know, like their word's good because I'm trustworthy, and so I'll take their word because I'd hope they would take mine, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you ever done like a couple jobs without contracts, Scott?
Oh, it would have had to been early on. But then, you know, I think I've always sort of worked with the contract, but it took me a while before I kind of realized some of the things you have to put in the contract, definitely revisions, because, you know, my earlier contracts didn't leave much for that. Yeah. And also, you know, most of the really bad projects I had, they weren't because of the direct client, they were because of somebody else that was an influencer in there that I didn't sign a contract with, but they were sort of behind the project and I didn't know it. So that's kind of something that I'm, you know, I don't really do much freelance work anymore, but those are some things I have to watch out for. Like, you know, I've had basically all the major projects from hell or whatever that I've had have been because of somebody else. Like there would be two partners and I didn't even know that the other partner existed, and I signed a contract with one, and then, you know, they part ways, and then one of them takes the artwork, and they're not really supposed to own the artwork, and all that kind of stuff like that. I've dealt with a lot of things like that, but I've always sort of had contracts, but just having a contract and just to, I mean, if somebody decides they don't want to honor the contract, you're still kind of screwed anyway, I mean, you could take them to court, but a lot of times that's a pain in the ass. But I think, if somebody wants to screw you over, they can, and unless you have all the money to throw into court, it's really probably not worth it. But I think contracts more of a way to just to make everything clear. What's expected of you, what's expected of the client, and everything. Because if you don't have that contract, then they might not have the same expectations that you have, or what's required.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I mean, it definitely, like, if you have it in writing, you are like legally backed. Now, whether it's financially worth your while to pursue it is a different discussion. But yeah, like, so if somebody's shady to the point where they're not going to even write a contract, maybe they aren't even being shady. Maybe they're just thoughtless about it, and that's a big warning sign too, right? Because you don't want people, especially a big project, you don't want people who are going in kind of half-cocked, because if they're asking for your investment, you need to get their investment in return. So
big time.
So those are things I learned the hard way too. Another big warning sign is the exposure thing. Like a lot of tales of who your art was shown to, or like what it's going to become. And a lot of the time I find, I think it's a little different, because I think with your client, I think they are legitimately well known, but like, I know I've had my experience with clients who like puff themselves up and talk a lot about their company and the exposure they'll offer and stuff. Those are usually the companies that die within like 2 months or didn't exist to begin with. Mm-hmm. When I've done work for like, bigger clients, like they never tout themselves. Like they don't have to, like you work for Scholastic.
Right.
They don't have to be like, we're Scholastic. Like they're actually really polite and nice and kind of humble. And it's more, at least my experience was more like, wow, this is a big client, Mm-hmm. Because like, once again, I think, I don't know. It just seems like if you have to tout the exposure that it will offer, I don't know. So the exposure trap, like that's a big one. And then like the guilt trap, and it sounds like that might've been more self-inflicted. I don't know, but the guilt trap of like, well, you have to finish it because you started it. And for me, like, at least for me, like the big thing is just like realizing you kind of like, you can have this moment of just kind of waking up and realizing it's a business. And if you were a business, like if you're a McDonald's and somebody comes in, and is like, hey, my friend's like this famous person, and like, I'm going to give you lots of exposure, so give me a cheeseburger. Like, I think most people, even at a register, just getting paid minimum wage, like have enough rational sense to be like, look, I don't care if you're the governor, like you have to buy, like, you have to purchase the product here.
Yeah, there's countless videos online about people actually going into just your average, restaurant or hair salon or whatever, and basically, approaching people with the same line that we get all the time. But one of the things I wanted to say, because it is kind of like you were talking about how certain people saw your stuff, Mike, and everything, and sometimes it's like that's kind of like a cool thing, like an ego boost. But I remember my brother, who he's done some books and things like that, but he doesn't really do illustration professionally. Here or there he does stuff, but he was working with a screenwriter who had a fairly major motion picture, but I don't think they had hits in a while, but they were working on this project. And so right there, that was kind of a cool name. And so that was intriguing to him. And at one point, this project that he was working on, Stan Lee was attached to him. And this is before like Marvel Universe took off and everything, the cinematic universe, and he kind of got back. And this is probably, I'm guessing this is sort of around that POW Entertainment time, something like that. So, I think my brother was kind of like, this is cool. But everything he told me about the project, I was like, ooh, this does not sound good. And
Stan Lee's attached. I mean, you're definitely going to get paid and get credit, right? I mean, Stan Lee.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, as cool as that sounds, sometimes you just got to step back and because it doesn't matter who's attached, because it doesn't mean anything really. I mean, things go, as somebody who's created a children's show and had it optioned, and then nothing eventually ever became of it after that. Entertainment products are pitched and sold and dropped and reworked and, over and over again in the industry, and it happens all the time. And, it's just the chance of something like that actually happen, even with somebody like a Stan Lee or somebody else like that attached to it, is, it's slim. But I mean, and I don't know, you can for me, I don't know if it's just because I've been doing it for a while, but I pick up on red flags like that, and there's certain cues and things when I'm talking to somebody, I'm like, this does not sound right. I think I'm gonna pass on that. So, but I guess some of that just kind of comes with experience. But it's hard, like especially if you're just starting out or whatever. Not that you were necessarily, Mike, but because you had previous experience, doing that kind of stuff. But
right.
But even if you had like working for a company or something and then transitioning to doing something freelance, sometimes it's it's hard to turn that stuff down. But sometimes it's as you kind of found out, it's not worth it.
Yeah, so one of my, I'll share one of my health clients, and I want to get back though and get more details on your experience, because it's so much more recent,
Mm-hmm.
But so I took this job doing like a graphic novel, which right there should be a red flag. Never do graphic novels for anybody but yourself, unless they're paying you really well, But I was pretty desperate for cash. I had just been doing this thing for like this website called The Root, where it was like a weekly comic, and I did that for like a year. And so I was like, oh, I can do this like pretty quick for pretty cheap. So I signed on to do it for about $80 a page, which sounds, actually that doesn't sound like a lot, but to me at the time it sounded feasible, because it was like I even had a contract and stuff. I was like, it'll be black and white with one tone color, and like limited the revisions and stuff like that. And it ended up being like a 6-month just walk through hell with these guys, and they were, once again, red flags that I should have picked up on that I didn't. They were like they worked for like a clinic that helped, like they're doctors, right? So they worked for like a rehab clinic in Florida, and had decided to write this like tell-all story about some singer that was really famous, that was like about their rehab and stuff, and how horrible the rehab clinic is, and all the dark sides and seedy things of the rehab clinic. And they, of course, were going to get an option for a movie because they were tight with all these famous people and stuff like that. And this book was like their vehicle to get that movie deal. And I was like, well, they're doctors, they're loaded, and they're willing to pay the money for it, so I'll take the project, because I was dry for work. And then, like I said, like 6 months in, every time I do something, there would just be like this kind of like, well, it would be more exciting if we could make it like this. And I'd be like, but the script kind of like, you kind of had this in the script. Yeah, but we're changing, And I'd be like, okay, well, I need to charge for that change. And they'd be like, do we really need to charge, buddy? They're that client. And to me, that's another huge red flag, is like, if somebody who's working for you, you don't have like, if it's a client you've worked for like 10 years, like one of my favorite clients, they hire me and my wife like every year to do t-shirts. And that client can say like, love when they sign out, like, you know, with their name, right? Because like I know that client, like they're a really cool person, and we've built like a working relationship. So it's like if I were called buddy, I'd be like, okay, yeah, we're buddies, we're cool. If it's a new client and they're like, hey, buddy guy, do me a favor, man, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's a bad sign already, because like I'm not your buddy. I'm your employee right now, and you're not paying me. So, you know, like that's not really a buddy thing to do. Like buddies pay their employees, you know? So like, anyhow, so long story short, it was just like very similar. And eventually I had to kind of call it with the client because they wanted to do like so much more work on it. And I was like, look, I've fulfilled the contract at this point, so here's what's going to happen. You're going to pay your last bit. And they didn't actually pay like the last chunk. And this was like a 6 to 8 month project. And it was paid in thirds. And so I actually picked up a bigger job at the time, so I just let it go because I was like, it's not even worth legally pursuing. I'm just sick of these people, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And 2 months later, they called asking for the pages so they could submit them to the clients because they had lost the PSD files. And I was like, oh, that sucks. I didn't keep them, which I did, but I wasn't going to provide them to them because they didn't pay the rest of their money. I was like, I might be able to find them if you pay what you owe me.
Did you say that?
Yeah, I did, and I got a check, and so I finally sent them the stuff. But I was like, it's funny how much they're willing to skimp on pay.
So they didn't offer you when they came crawling back. They didn't offer you to pay the money before they asked for it.
No, they just thought I'd like be like, oh yeah, the files I sent you that you lost like an idiot and tried to run out without paying.
Right.
Anyhow, so that was my own little short experience. I've had other bad clients, but that was probably the longest term project where it was just like 5 months in, I was like, I hate these people. Like, and it was mainly because it was always an argument to get paid. It was always an argument to get clarity on what they were asking for. Like if you asked about a panel, like, what do you want in this? And they'd be like, well, make it like jazz. And you're like, what the hell does that mean? That doesn't mean anything. Like, but you know, always with but you know, when it's a movie, it's going to be cast with these people. Like they had me draw the characters based on actors they wanted to cast in the scenes and stuff. It was absurd. And like, of course they never got a movie deal because they're one of 2 billion who are writing scripts that think they're geniuses, you know? But anyhow, my point is just like, I don't like think back on that and go, man, I missed an opportunity by not working with those clients again.
Yeah. There's never, I can say in
the chats, Corbett Illustration said, make it snazzy, make it pop.
Yeah. But I was going to say, there's never been, in as long as I've been doing this, there's never been a job that I turned down that I regretted. But there's been jobs that I've taken that I have, or did I say that right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, regret turning it down. There's never been a job, but there's been jobs that I've taken that I was like, I wish I would have turned this down. So yeah, I mean, not that it couldn't happen, but the odds are so, you know, if you get a bad feeling, it's probably best to, you know.
Yeah, and I mean. Away. And the thing that's a good, it's a hard thing to say because when you're in the trenches and you need the money, you're pretty desperate, and like so it's hard, and I had to kind of train myself, especially after that. Like I just wouldn't take comic work because the page rate is never worth it. Like the max I've ever seen is like maybe $200 a page, and like. You know, compare that with like an editorial where you're getting paid like $800 or $900 for one single illustration. Like that, I mean, so you're doing one illustration, almost $1,000. You're doing like a page of illustrations where you had to do character turnarounds. You had to like do probably at minimum like 9 different illustrations, and you're getting paid like maybe, $10 an illustration or $20 it's just not worth it.
Yeah, that's how it was when I was working in film, and I had to stop because it was like, if you were lucky, maybe like the best job would be 250 a day, but you're only working for maybe a week, 2 weeks.
Yep.
And the kind of work you're doing in that day is like wrecking your body to the point where like after that job is over, you're not lining up to take another one, so the money has to last.
Oh yeah. And that's the thing, like once again, my take on it now is just like, I was stubborn when I was younger. Now I don't care. Like I'll do what it takes to make money. So like if I need to, like today, if I lost my job and I needed steady income, I'd literally, I kid you not, I would go to work fast food before taking a client like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because fast food, at least I have some legal protection. I have a guaranteed paycheck,
Yeah.
and like, once again, it's like, I actually get paid more for my work, which is like it. Once again, I just, yeah, but I think most of us have learned that the hard way or the easy way.
And you don't feel like you're giving away your talent for nothing. Like if you're working fast food, you're just you're doing a job.
Yeah.
Whereas, if you're getting paid what somebody would pay you to work a fast food restaurant to make comics,
yeah.
I mean, I guess sure you're making comics, but you can make your own comics and I don't know. It's just like
you can make your own comics for free.
And it's not, and it's weird because it's like, and that's kind of across. It's even with like the big companies. A lot of them. I mean, sure, if you're in demand, you make money at like a Marvel or DC. But I've had projects like that I've worked at for comic book projects that I've worked that weren't, for a comic book company. They were like for a nonprofit or something that paid more than what Marvel or DC would pay per page.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's weird because if you do comics outside of the comic book industry, like say if you're doing a comic book for, say if there's a toy line and they want a comic book to include in there, like they did the old He-Man stuff, that's going to pay more than any comic book company will pay.
Oh yeah.
It's just so weird.
And I mean, like it is one of those things that everyone has to weigh for themselves, but it's just like, for me, it doesn't make sense to invest that time and that energy and that creativity when I could be doing that on my own work.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's not even a difficult thing, but I do remember at the time, like when you're really scraping by, like you have like, it's feast and famine in illustration. So it's like when you're freelance and you're dry, it is a scary moment. It's like a floor dropping out from under you. And, when somebody comes with a lifeline, even if it seems like a counterfeit lifeline, it is tempting. So it's like, I don't know, but I am refreshed to hear that you broke your chains, Mike. It sounds, and I don't even know if they're intentional chains. That's the weird thing. It's not always that the client intends that,
It's true. No, it's true. She was actually pretty cool. I mean, it was kind of a pain in the beginning, but I don't think it was necessarily her fault. She's not a creative person.
Yeah.
But, to add on to what you were just saying, actually, the whole reason I even got involved in film, to be in that position, to get that job in the first place, was desperation. And it was before I went down that path, I was in that point where nothing was paying the bills. The illustration stuff wasn't working out. My drawing just was not up to speed where I wanted to be. And I lost total faith in myself, to the point where, a buddy came around and was like, hey, why not just completely change your life direction? And that sounds good when the money's on the table and you can actually, solve that problem. But one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is that It's like that old saying where like you're just 4 feet away from diamonds or whatever, you keep
Oh,
digging
yeah.
into, that whole thing. It was
Yeah.
kind of like that because, now 4 years later since then, well, this is the 4th year, so not quite 4 years.
Yeah.
4 years later, I'm right back to the comic stuff. I'm right back to illustration. Nothing about that swayed my opinion on what I need to do with my life. And so, yeah, that was a temporary fix, but in the long game, it took away time that I could have been spending on this stuff that I actually love and actually enjoy and fulfills me. And
Yeah.
it's turning out that now, because I'm putting more time into this, what I'm passionate about, it's looking more promising than any of the film stuff ever was.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. There's like an irony in that where it's like, I mean, if you have to take the job, of course. But, there's a lot to be said about, if it's just a struggle, but you can make it work, maybe just keep making it work because you never know, you might hit a turning point. I've been listening to a lot of Richard Friend, comic book inker. He's got a YouTube channel, and he said something like, damn, it was just on the tip of my tongue and now it's gone. I hate when that happens. Oh, man.
That's okay. I keep thinking of that.
Damn.
But I actually I'm always reminded of this kind of wake up moment after, because I did freelance for a really long time, and it did get to a point where like a lot of people want where I was when they're younger, like they want to have somebody hire them for their style, and I got to that point. And for me, like a big turning point was like, I remember just being really frustrated because I didn't have time to work on my comics. I rarely had time to work on my own stuff, and if I did, it was always for money. Like I was instantly thinking like, what's the next print I could sell? What's the next T-shirt or whatever? And I read this interview with Craig Thompson where he was talking about like they were discussing like at one point when he was working on blankets, he literally was eating out of a trash can.
Oh man.
And they were like, man, that's terrible. And he's like, no, it isn't. That's art. And he was like, that's the cost of making art. Like you have to actually struggle to make this stuff. And he's like, if I hadn't done that, like blankets wouldn't have happened. And I was like, thinking about it, I was like, that's how that stuff gets done. It's just really hard work and focus. And like, not, keep in mind, I've never had to eat out of a trash can since starting art. I've been close, I've had really bad years, but I've never been to that level. But at the same time, like it did put into perspective, like, oh yeah, that's right. Like comics are art, And like for me, I always treated comics like, well, they're commercial and stuff like that. But really the comics, like to do them well, like especially if it's your own creator own thing, like it is art. And like they're, not that the starving artist thing has to happen, but there is a struggle to it. And if you're not struggling, you may not be actually making art,
Yeah.
You might just be making swill, which I would totally have debated that 10 years ago, like, but I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I don't know if it you kind of said that too, but I don't know if it necessarily has to be a struggle. I mean, if you don't have to struggle,
oh no,
I don't think you have to struggle in order to make good art. But I mean, a lot of time, there is struggle within it, but hopefully it doesn't always have to be a struggle,
Yeah, I think maybe I was wording that wrong. I guess my point is that you shouldn't be surprised if it is a struggle,
right?
Because it has been for like the majority of the history of art. And that runs to like animation, that runs into like the commercial industry. I mean, if you look at, there's guys that were legends, like the 9 Old Men, and a couple of the 9 Old Men were like died in poverty, because and I mean, like, it's partially because they got screwed by contracts and stuff like that. But I mean, part of that's just the cost of doing business in art. Like, it is a hard industry. It's not a lot of money. And then, like, if you want to do your own vision, like, you run the risk of failure. And to have success, I think it does take a lot of work. Now, keep in mind, I feel like I'm living fairly comfortably, so I don't feel like it's like across the board, but I do think I'd probably get a lot more done if I were willing to live a little less comfortably. I just like, personally for me at this point with the kid and stuff like that, I'm just like, no, I need a roof over his head and stuff like that. But I see younger artists who like are really going all out and they're seeing more return quicker because they're investing more time and more work, into their own stuff. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yep.
And I feel like I don't know. Maybe that was too extreme.
I remembered the quote that I was trying to remember too.
All right.
It kind of goes to this a little bit, but he was basically saying that art and creativity is kind of like an itch, and if you have that itch, you're just gonna have to scratch it.
Yep.
And sometimes it feels like going a different way might be the better solution, but you're gonna get that itch again. And if you're the type of person that just keeps coming up, then you just have to find a way to make it work, which goes along with what you were just saying about the struggle. I think in order to make it work, you have to kind of be willing to struggle.
Yeah.
From my own perspective, I was kind of one of those people that wore a lot of hats for a long time, and that never got me anywhere. I mean, I got a lot of work, but I'd never climbed any ladders. I was always at the bottom rung or, maybe a couple rungs up. But I mean, I feel like focus is kind of a key, and you got to find that one thing that just really drives you nuts and just dig into it, whether you got to struggle or not.
Yeah, I always say it's passion is the most important thing, because if you don't have the passion for it, if you try to walk away from it and you just can't, then you have that passion. I mean, I don't blame anyone who just kind of who's struggling and then kind of says, this is too much of a struggle. I've got to, get a real job or whatever. But I mean, I think the people that if you have that kind of passion, if that's all, if it's just a lifestyle to you and that's all you can do or all you want to do, you'll find a way to make it work. And maybe you'll struggle and maybe it won't, maybe you're not, for most of the time you won't get rich off of it. But if you can like carve a living out of it, and if that's what you want to do, it's like a lot of people work day jobs so that they can be weekend warriors or whatever they're working for the weekend, so they can go buy a boat or and that's their thing. That's what they love to do. But
isn't there like a song? I'm just kidding. Sorry.
Yeah. You want me to put on my what's his name? My headband. What's his name? Mike. What's his name from Loverboy? I
don't know, but I do know the hook.
Anyway, yeah. So my Loverboy bandana and everything. So anyway, so what was I saying? Now you sidetracked me.
You were saying that like for a lot of people, like they get like for them, like they're working for the weekend or
But if you're doing artwork and maybe you don't have all this discretionary income, but your hobby and your love is something you're doing anyway, then you're not having to pay for that other stuff, Yeah. So it's kind of,
Yeah, and I think like that goes more to the point. So like for me, like I'll just talk from my own experience. Maybe we can share this or whatever, what our own struggles are with making art. But like for me, the sacrifice I make is just time. So like where a lot of people I work with, like maybe they're working and like maybe their end goal is like where I'm at my work, where it's like I want to move up, I want to get promoted and then whatever. I think for a lot of people, that's like their end goal. They're just like, I'll get in a business and work my way up and be at the top. For me, it's like, I don't invest that extra time in that. I go home and I, hang out with my family and stuff. And then I spend 4 hours, working on comics, after work, and like, so the sacrifices are more just like social sacrifices. Like I don't go out a lot. I don't hang out with people a lot. I don't like go to movies frequently. Like when I catch up on, even staying hip to YouTube is difficult because like I try to watch everybody's videos that I'm subscribed to. And most of the time when I do that, I'm working on comics. And I think it's probably across the board for most of us, that stuff. But one of the most frustrating things when you're like, pretty far in is like meeting another artist who's like well, man, I wish I was lucky like you and had the time or something. And it's almost insulting because it's like, no, you do have the time, and it's like actually a lot of work. And at the same time, you're right in the sense that like I've had many moments where I'm like, man, I wish I could actually not do comics and just work for the weekend. I wish I could, but I'm only happy when I'm making stuff.
It's like a compulsion. You just have to.
Yeah. And yet I'm also miserable when I'm making stuff. So it's this mix, you know, I don't know.
Struggle is real.
Yeah. But I mean, like, what do you guys like? I mean, because I do think there is sacrifice involved in it, just like there would be if you were to say, want to get really, really good at anything. Like, you know, like if you wanted to be a good chess player or something, it's like, I'm sure you don't just, well, I'm sure there are some people who are just brilliant, but I think a lot of people, it's like they just practice a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the trick, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, I know. As far as myself, I mean, my biggest struggle right now is it's like I'm 46 and I'm basically starting. It's almost like I'm starting all over, and I wouldn't necessarily. I'm starting from scratch because I've been able to do this professionally for whatever over 20 years. So I mean, I've got that experience and everything. But whereas before, I was doing freelance. I was working for clients, and now I'm kind of moving away from that. And I have a creative day job, and that's cool. And I appreciate the fact that I have that. But then when I come home, I'm working on my own stuff, and I'm trying to build my own brand. And I want, I don't necessarily want to do client work. I want to create my own stuff, and that's not something that I had done in the past. I mean, before, I mean, my attitude is totally done like a 180. Before, my attitude was, no, I'm not going to do any work unless somebody's paying me to do work.
Yeah.
And now it's like, no, I got to sink in my time to create these, prints or whatever, and hopefully they'll sell. Hopefully I can build an audience so those will sell. And so it's like everything's flipped around. So it's like, I see people like, like Holly Brown, she's kind of doing what I want to do. And she's a lot younger, but I think, that's kind of how she started off, and she's been able to do that, which by the way, she's going to be on next week's episode. So we'll talk to her about all that stuff. Right. But it's, so it's kind of like I'm starting over, and it's, it's totally different. So my whole way of thinking, I have to rethink everything. So, and it's kind of hard to make that switch, but I'm committed to it. So, I know it'll happen eventually. I made the other thing happen. Yeah. It's not like, I had some times where I was super successful, and a lot of times where I wasn't doing freelance and stuff. So, that's just the way it is. But, who knows what'll happen, but sometimes I think, but then you go back to that old quote with, that Jack Kirby was 44 when he first created Fantastic Four or whatever. So that's kind of reassuring. But a lot of times, you do see people that are younger, and they've kind of they've grown up with social media, and they know how to work that. And here I am trying to go back and figure all that stuff out. And how do I build an audience and do all this stuff? And sometimes it's, oh man, am I like too old for this or what? But no, I think I can do it. It's just,
Yeah, and what's interesting is to me, what I hear when you're saying that is like the cost of it, because and this goes to the sacrifice thing that I was talking about. So whether you're going to be humble about it or not, I'll mention the sacrifice that you just talked about. So now you could be doing more freelance and making way more money with that time, but you're choosing to invest it in your own art, in your own creator own stuff, which is a long-term investment. That's a lot harder than the quick paycheck of taking on a little bit of extra freelance and upping your income, and then, working for the weekend, right? And having that time. So it's to me, that is a sacrifice, to make your own stuff, because you could, you're in a position where you could probably take more freelance when you're off work, and that's probably a lot more tempting than the next prints sometimes, because it's a quick paycheck, and you don't have to promote it, they do it.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily that I dislike doing freelance, and I was, I never really had a dissatisfied client, other than just crazy people that they didn't want to pay for the work, but
Yeah.
But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But it's not necessarily doing client work; it's the marketing and finding the work. Because like right now, with my day job, you know, I go into work, I work my 9 to 5, I get a paycheck. It's fun work. I get to illustrate all day.
Yeah.
And I don't have to worry about finding work. So
Exactly.
you know, I can go home and I can all that extra time just doing the businessy stuff. And I'm still doing businessy stuff because I'm trying to do my own stuff. But to me, I don't know, it's different, you know. It's not trying to find work, it's trying to market myself and
exactly. Yeah, like that's totally different because like you were saying, like so like I was saying, I think that's kind of the sacrifice a little bit, because it's like you're choosing to pour into your own project when there are possibly more profitable in the short term things you could do with that time. You're choosing to spend that time on something that's your own, because like honestly, I think this goes to like even convention sales. Like you probably feel better when you sell a comic and make way less profit than you do selling a print. It's just a weird thing. Like it's just, I don't know, maybe not.
In my case, maybe not necessarily. Sort of, yes and no. I mean, because I am selling my own creations as prints as well.
Yeah.
So I do take pride when somebody wants one of my prints. Now, if I was selling fan art and somebody wanted it, I wouldn't take that pride in it, because it's just like they don't care about me. They care about Harley Quinn or Deadpool or something.
Yeah, and if it were your own, like if it were a client's, would you feel good about it? As good about it?
What do you mean?
Like if it were a client's, like art you did for a client.
No, I mean, you definitely get into client works, and I kind of feed off that whole thing of, oh, this person has a problem. How can I solve that with illustration or design or whatever? So I do like that aspect of it, but in the end, you know, how it's not always all of my ideas. So, you know, obviously the client has their input, and I can't always do exactly what I want. And then there's some times where I want to go to one direction. The client says, no, we want to go this way. And in the end, it's like, oh, you were right. You were right about that. That's better for your brand. And I think it eventually turned out better. It's like you presented with the challenge. You're like, well, this isn't exactly what I thought would be best for this, but how can I take what they want and make it work? And then you do that. And, you know, I do like that. I like, you know, I don't want to give because a lot of times as artists, you know, it's just like with anything else. People want to hear the drama. People want to hear they're more apt to want to hear bad news than good news. But for the most part, I haven't had a lot of problems with clients, but the ones that I have, those stick out, and those are the stories we like to tell, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so that's the thing. I'll be more candid though. I don't like doing work for clients. It's work. It's like, I don't mind it. It's fun work. It's the best work I could get paid for. But if I had to choose between, like, you know, if someone's watching this and I have to choose between drawing something for you or drawing something for me, I far prefer drawing something for me, because I'm a human being, right? Like, I'm selfish. I have my own creative desires. And like, so to me, like, to have that, you know, like, I also don't want to oversell like the creative sacrifice thing or whatever, because it's a lot more fun to do art that you get to see from like the thing I love. Like right now I'm working on layout for my next page, and that moment where you get to like see it from thumbnail to completion, and you're the critic, you're the person who crits your own work and sees it all the way through. And that's a cool thing, because you don't get that even with the best of clients, you know? So yeah, what about you, Mike? What do you feel like? Do you feel like you're in a pool of sacrifice for your own work, or am I just like this weird self-serving dude?
No, I totally agree with you. Not to be like melodramatic, but I do feel like
melodramatic.
My entire life as a sacrifice for my masterpieces. But no, seriously though, it really kind of has been. I mean, I've always lived very, very, very cheaply as possible. Spent most of my life living with multiple roommates just to keep costs as low as possible. Very bohemian lifestyle for a long time. Even when Mel and I got together, we were living with roommates and stuff too. You know, keeping the food costs as low as possible. I never go out. I mean, I go out maybe once a month to actually go and do something that's actually other than, you know, working or practicing or just spending time with Mel at home, you know. And yeah, I mean, every day that I have, whenever I've even had gigs, like I'm always working in time to be working on my projects. And I've talked with Gaz about this too, where you get to a point where you actually have to schedule relaxation time. Like you actually have to, you have to force yourself to have fun.
I'm actually doing that a lot lately. Is actually scheduling time to do that, because that's something. If I didn't have a girlfriend and didn't want to like, hey, let's do something other than just sit on the couch. I mean, I wouldn't be sitting on the couch, but I'd just be drawing all day and I wouldn't get out. So it's like we're doing this like staycation this weekend. We're going to this resort because like if you live in Arizona where it's 115 degrees in the summer, no resorts are like dead. No one wants to go there. So they offer these killer deals for people who live here. So I'm going to do that. So I try to do that stuff. But yeah, but it's an effort just to say, let's go out and go do something, because otherwise I just stay in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's funny because like to me this is where it's like I don't know if it's sacrifice or maybe it's just that like people who are like driven to do their creator own stuff are just crazy. Like, because there have been, like I said, there have been times where I've just thought about it and been like, you know, I'd really like to not be thinking about this stuff all the time. And yet, like, once again, if I take like a week, like if I did like a staycation, 2 days in, I would be like, I would just feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I always bring my work with me because like my girlfriend sleeps in and I don't want to sit in a hotel room just sitting there doing nothing. So I bring my work and I work on it. So.
Yeah.
I've totally had times like that. Like I remember going on like a wine tasting thing with a bunch of friends, and on the bus, like we had rented like a bus for the wine, and it was, you know, it's like a fun thing. And the whole time I was just in the back of my head like, this is cool, yeah, but got some panels to do.
Yeah.
I want to do more of my own. Like I could have done some stuff for my own stuff. So it is funny. It's probably good we all have people who make us get out. Yeah. But I think when you're working on this stuff, it's like it actually kind of requires like making you leave sometimes. 'Cause at least with my wife, like sometimes like she'll just have to be like, we're going right now, and I'll be like, okay, fine. Like because like I get really micro focused on what I'm doing, you know.
Yeah. But for me it's like I want to do that stuff, you know, but it's like because sometimes my girlfriend will say, she'll suggest something and then I'll say, oh yeah, let's do that, and she'll say, oh, I was surprised you said that, I thought I'd have to drag you or something. And it's not that I don't want to do that stuff, it's just I won't unless somebody brings it up, you know.
Yeah.
Like anytime
it's not.
Yeah, anytime like a friend wants to go do something, I'm like, oh cool, let's do that. But I won't make the effort to call a friend and say,
oh
let's
yeah,
do something.
Right. Yeah. I'd rather just not be bothered.
Me too.
I feel so bad. I get like not angry, but I guess irritated. Like, oh, who could that be trying to get me to do something?
How dare they be friendly and want to hang out? Yeah,
I gotta drop 50 heads in this sketchbook today. Crazy people.
Yeah, it is funny that like for me it's, and I think that's part of building a habit too, because I remember when I was younger, it was like the opposite, where it was like hard to create that space to work on my own projects, you know? Mm-hmm. And like, so I'd have trouble because I'd be like, oh, I have all these social things that I have to, and then somewhere it just flipped. So now it's like, it's, you know, I don't really have to pencil in what I'm going to do with art because I have it like on my mind all the time. But like you were saying, like I have to pencil in the social stuff, you know, because otherwise I'll just like I'll you know, stay in and then go nuts. But yeah, that's crazy.
So I don't know how we're doing on time, but I wanted to loop back around to kind of, because I don't know if we totally, put a pin in Mike's story. I mean, now that you're kind of at that point where you've kind of talked to the client and you're kind of, separating yourself from that project. One, I'm kind of curious, obviously say as much as you want or as little as you want, but how that went. And then two, kind of what are your plans now that you've got that time, that you don't have this weight hovering over your head?
Yeah. Oh, God. Well, the first, let's see. So when I first decided I was going to quit, like I said, it was sort of just like a gut feeling, like this just needs to end, and it needs to end now, And so I sent her a text message, because that's mostly how we communicate. To give you context, she lives in Ireland, so their time over there is pretty much the exact opposite of mine here. Like while I'm sleeping, she's awake. While she's awake, I'm sleeping. So just organizing times for us to talk has always been kind of difficult. But so I sent her a text message basically saying, hey, we need to talk. And I was trying to do it over Google Hangouts or Skype or something so that we could do it, semi face to face, because I didn't want to write up an email, because we've been kind of working together for like 4 years now, and I feel like we have sort of kind of become friends, and so I felt like I owed her at least that courtesy to like talk about it and not just drop the bomb, So she got back to me. I think it was like a week or something. I don't remember the exact time frame, but I remember getting irritated. Like, oh, this is taking too long. I just want this to end already. And she kind of blew me off, actually, which is something that happened quite a bit while we were working together. Is we would make plans to call, and then inevitably I'd be sitting there waiting like a half hour or so after we were supposed to talk, and then I would get the message, oh, gotta cancel, something came up, after I'd like altered my sleep schedule to be up at a time to talk.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so that happened again, and I was really upset. So I put it into an email. I didn't like go off on her or anything. I actually I'd never had to do that before. I'd never quit a job before in my entire life. So what I did to keep my emotions in check, but to also say what I had to say, I just looked up a template, templates for letters of resignation, and I pretty much just replaced little bits with stuff to fit what I had to say. And so there's this little part in there that said something like, if you have any questions or concerns, I'll be happy to help you with the transition.
The transition. I love it.
I left it in there because it sounded nice. When I ended up talking to her, she wants to take me up on it. She's like, oh, I really liked what you said about helping with the transition. I'm like, shit, I don't even know what that means.
It was in the template. I don't know.
Yeah. But so yeah, I ended up talking to her on the phone a few days ago, actually. And it went really well. It went surprisingly well. I was really nervous because I'd never had to have that conversation before, because I'd never quit, like I said. And it went surprisingly well. She was really receptive. She was very understanding of, the events that have transpired, because, not to throw my buddy under the bus, but I mean, he even throws himself under the bus. Like there was a lot of mistakes made early on that sort of just never got resolved. And from her perspective and from mine, I was just kind of trying to keep it together. And there was just so much work to do. And for my own weird obsession, it was like a thread that I was holding on to that gave me a purpose for a long time. So I didn't question anything that was going on,
Yeah.
And she took kind of responsibility for it, because out of all three of us, she is the most professional of the bunch, and she just kind of let it go. And she owned up to that, which I greatly appreciated, because that's how I felt too. Like, in hindsight, not during it, I'm still learning a lot of this stuff, But I do feel like somebody had to know what was going on at some point. Somebody had to speak up and say, hey, something's got to change, you know? And it wasn't me. I was just toiling away, you know? So the windup actually, we talked at length about, you know, the last few years, everything that went into these last few years. And she actually revealed something to me that was really, it's too late to be mad about it, but I got like the final icing on the cake to really help me close this chapter, which was pretty much the story that I was told by my friend that got me onto the project at the start was that, and I'll tell it again. I said this before when I was on the Artcasters once before about how I got this job in the first place, because it's a fun story, and it turns out it's just a fable. It's not true, but this is what I've been going on for the last you know, close to 4 years. Was that I was on this job, and one of the actors that was supposed to play a zombie in this film got sick, really sick, and he couldn't be in the movie anymore. And so they were freaking out because they really needed a 9th zombie for some reason. So I volunteered, and the director was excited, and the producer was excited, and I was like the hero of the day, like, yay, zombie number 9. So I got to spend a lot of time in the makeup trailer, which is where the producer was and all the makeup effects people and stuff like that. And during that whole time, I was just, you know, talking with all of them about stuff that I'm into, stuff that I like, stuff that I'm, you know, working on at the time, which at the time I was working on a stop motion project just for myself, just to kind of mess around with it and see how that went. And the producer was in there talking with all of us. And so when my buddy talked to me about this project, the way he explained it to me was that the producer overheard me talking about my stop motion project while I was in the makeup trailer, and that she was essentially like so impressed that she wanted to give me an opportunity to work on this project of hers, and that I could do a stop motion and actually get paid for it. And how cool would that be, you know? And the reality that I learned, because I brought this up to her because she started one of her main defenses when we were talking about whether or not she owes me money and all this kind of stuff was, well, it wasn't my idea to make it a stop motion in the first place. And I was like, what? Like, oh, wait a minute, hold on. So then I had to probe a little further. Like, what do you mean? Like, this whole thing was your idea. Like, that's why you called me on, remember? Because this and this and that. And she starts laughing. She's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, that's what I was told. Like, is that honestly not the case? And she started digging back through her emails. She's like, Mike, look here, I'll read this to you verbatim. And so I don't have the email with me, but it was essentially the windup is that my buddy had been working with her for like a few weeks already, if not like months, on this project. And he was trying to do it as a 2D animation, but nothing was working. It wasn't going well. Whatever he was producing just wasn't hitting the mark for her. And so he called me on to basically save his ass and told me this crazy story that it was all about me. So when I found that out, and she found out that I didn't know that, it really kind of changed everything for the both of us. It was like this whole thing was built on a lie, which is pretty messed up, you know? Like, that's your friend, and you pretty much swindled me into saving his butt on this project. So luckily she was really cool and gracious about it, and you know, she's not like making up for his mistakes, but just on her part she felt like she owed it to me to like make this right somehow. So rather than just, you know, kind of calling it quits and breaking even, because right now I'm owed more than what I've been paid, which is a huge problem for me. And I have this enormous set in my kitchen that, you know, I got to find something to do with. I don't want
and
it.
It takes up like your entire kitchen, right?
Oh yeah, at least like
for 4 years.
Yeah.
I would say the first thing you're going to do besides making art is cook a nice meal in a kitchen.
Yes. Yes. So that is like priority number one, is getting it out of here. And so, when I quit, we already set the wheels in motion that we were going to pretty much store it at Mel's mom's place in Wisconsin. She just got a new house and she's got a pretty big basement. But like, that's a temporary solution. That was just to get it out of here so we didn't have to look at it. And so the client was really cool, and she said that to make up for this and to kind of help ease this transition and to figure out what she wants to do moving forward, she's actually going to pay to put it into storage for me. So we're talking now, negotiating like a budget for packing materials and stuff like that, and she's going to pay to have it stored in like a air conditioned unit for like 3 months or something while she decides if she wants to buy it from me or not. Because right now she's got to weigh the cost effectiveness of it, the whole thing. Like, does she want to move forward with the stop motion? And if she does, she's going to have to ship this out to Ireland and, network with some people over there, which I actually know a stop motion animator in Ireland. So it would actually be easier for her to go that route. Or she can go and just do it a traditional 2D animation like she wanted to in the first place and then not buy the set from me. That's an option too. But either way, she's kind of given me this really awesome deal where she's going to pay to keep it in storage. I can go and try to find a buyer for it if I want, which I do. So if you're listening and you want a stop motion set, let me know. So I could sell it to somebody before she decides if she wants it or not, and she's cool with that too. So it's like everything has really gone in my favor. I couldn't have asked for a better solution to this issue.
That's awesome, and that to me that like highlights something. Maybe you can touch on it, but it's like one thing I've been experiencing a lot in management is how often like a lot of the times really things that seem like really unsolvable and really impossible to people just boils down to like just communication. Because like a lot of the time, like it sounds to me like the solution to this was like literally you guys have been running on something based on complete miscommunication. Mm-hmm. And once it was cleared up, it's like everybody kind of had better intentions than either of you realized, because she might have thought, oh, this guy's like swindling me. And, you might have had these thoughts and it turns out the whole time it's just like literally this guy said this thing years ago that like set the wheels in motion to this like nightmare.
Yeah.
That both were kind of stuck in. That's cool, but that's, I don't know, just something that made me think of was the fact that like a lot of the time, a lot of those things that seem really impossible are just like literally just having a conversation about it.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
I had so much fear going into that conversation. I didn't know how it was going to turn out. Like I said, I'd never done that before. So here I'm thinking like, well, worst case scenario, I get sued and I don't want to deal with that, but it wound up being totally fine,
That's so cool.
I think it was fortunate too that everything, between us up to that point was really above the board and honest. And we've been very open the whole time. So having that conversation, even though it was hard, it just went well because of that, honesty and being forward, especially with the client. Like you got no reason to, try to spare their feelings and stuff.
Oh yeah.
It just helps, it helps a lot. And I've been very vocal this whole time. It's just I haven't gotten my way.
Yeah.
But
that makes sense. I think I don't know. I think that's so cool. I wish they all went that way. Yeah. Because that's cool. I mean, that's cool that she's willing to cover that cost and stuff too. That's amazing.
It's a lifesaver. I mean, especially since we're out money over the project. It was like, this could have been worse, having to pay for all the packing material and all that. Jeez.
And then do you feel like relief? Like just with that, it's kind of out now, it's done?
I really do. I'm like at 50% relief at this point. I'm going to feel it the most when the set is finally out of my sight. Or I should say when it's finally sold and gone and I never have to think about it again. But once we actually get it out of the kitchen, I think that's when it'll finally settle in. Because I'm piling up orders of prints and packing materials and stuff for my art business in our living room now because we don't have space in the kitchen. So once I can fill this space again, I guess, with with different things, I'll feel a little better, because at least that's more in line with what I want to be doing, and I don't have to look at this thing anymore. I'm going to be selling a lot of film equipment and stuff too, so I'll have more space. I think at that point, I'll finally feel some kind of relief. But
Yeah.
but yeah, it was like a weight lifted off my shoulders when we had that conversation. It took a little while to settle in because it's so bittersweet. I mean, it's like I put my heart and soul into this project. I probably shouldn't have, but I did, and I'm not going to finish it, and that really kind of hurts. But I'm over it. It took a little while, but I'm over it. I can definitely stand to see it all go and just be done. And then I could put that kind of time and energy and love into something that's, actually fits me, and that's actually, gonna move me forward with where I want to go. I mean, that's kind of like a side tangent, but that was like one of the big things about this project that I've learned, is that everything takes time. And for me, I really had to make the distinction between like what I wanted to spend that time on, because I'm the kind of person that likes to invest myself 100%. And so if I just know that that's how I am, then I have to get paid for that time, or I need to be investing that time in my own stuff. There's just no way around it. And if I can't work that out, then like you were saying, I got to work at a McDonald's or a Starbucks or something to supplement my income at that time. But I'm never taking on another project like this again unless I'm getting paid a lot.
Yeah.
There's just no way around it. Ironically, I actually got offered another animation gig at the start of this year, and it was for another damn forest. Someone wanted me to do another forest.
I hear you're in the forest. You got any more room to
not happening. No, they actually wanted it in 2D animation, so I would have to draw all the little leaves. So I don't think so. Although that would probably be more in line with what I'm doing than the stop motion, but I'd rather just not even think about it.
So Mike, I've been thinking, like, I have this project that has a forest.
No.
That's going to be like the bane of your, like, what are you going to do if you get in deep into your comic and you have to draw a forest?
I'll deal with that when the time comes.
Yeah, that's cool though. I'm glad you're about to clear your forest. That seems pretty cool.
Yeah,
like, get that thing out of there. That's a huge step too, getting that done, man.
So in addition to just getting the forest out of there, I mean, how much time is that going to, I mean, I don't know how much time you put in like per week on that animation up to this point, if that's going to free up a lot of time that you can also, work on the comics and stuff.
Oh, definitely. I mean, for longest time, that was like my main thing. And I have a little timer that I set, and I try to, work at least 8 hours a day on it. But the way that I am, I always work more. Like I've learned that it's really hard for me to focus on more than one thing at a time. So it's like if I did the stop motion in that day, that's just it. That's all I'm doing, which is why I actually started the 100 Days of Making Comics, because I wasn't able to like figure that out. But then I started doing that, and then I was kind of went on strike on the stop motion for a little bit there, and then I was just working on my comics and not making progress on that. And so yeah, I'm a one thing at a time kind of person, so it's going to free up a lot of time for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, to kind of put I don't know, to touch on the client again and how cool she has been about this. She's actually like a huge fan of everything that I'm doing with the comics, and like really wishes me luck with all of that too. And she subscribed to my YouTube channel, and she was she first learned about my frustrations with the project from watching my 100 Days of Making Comics video. So she's cool about everything though. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the ideal situation with that. As far as it sounds like an unideal situation, but it went as well as it could, considering,
Definitely.
That's awesome.
I've definitely had some bad situations that did not work out this well. Stuff that I'm still waiting to get paid for that was like 5 years ago. I mean, man. So it could go a lot worse.
Yeah. That's cool. So, if anybody out there wants to get an animation set for stop motion, you should hit up Mike,
Definitely. Seriously.
I hear
Gotta
there's a
go.
pretty decent deal on it. So
Yeah, actually, I have worked out something that's like I'm going to offer it for like 2 different prices. So one is actually significantly more expensive, but it's no strings attached. But I'm willing to part with it for in exchange for credit on whatever films get made for it. But if you want to pay extra, then you never have to talk to me again, and you can have the set. So
That makes sense.
it's a licensed and unlicensed, basically.
Yeah.
that's rad.
I don't know who wouldn't want to give you credit, but
That's true. You never know, though. There's some people out there.
I hear there's this Stan Lee project.
Nice.
All right,
It's
so
the greatest stop motion ever.
it will. It'll be Excelsior. All right. Well, I think are we about at that time? What do you guys think?
Sure.
Yeah, when did we start? Because
Yeah.
I don't know, an hour, half hour. That's about normal.
Yeah. All right. So I think we will call it. So that's it. Where can we find your work, Mike?
Right now, my
Other
main
than
place
your
is on
kitchen.
Instagram. Yeah, come on down to my kitchen. Just peek through the window. Actually, if you're in Villa Park, you can look through the windows. You will see the forest. No, mostly Instagram. So I think it's Mike Emirates on Instagram. That's pretty much where I've been posting everything lately. And then here on YouTube occasionally too.
Awesome. Yeah, you guys should check out Mike's work. He's amazing, and his comics are cool. Scott, where can we? Well, I'll let you can it because you have the best explanation of the mailing list. You're on my channel, so you know where to find me. And then Scott, where can we find you, and where can they sign up for this glorious thing we do every week?
Okay, well, I'll start with that first. So as we said in the beginning, but maybe you're late or whatever, or maybe you haven't seen this before, but we rotate from Josh's channel to my channel and then back to Josh's channel, back to my channel. So you may not know who's hosting every single week, but the way you can figure that out is if you sign up for our mailing list, and there should be a link in the description for that. You just sign up for that. We don't spam you or anything. We just try to send out, hopefully 30 minutes, but sometimes it's more like 15 minutes or so before we go live, just so you know where to go, where to find the links and all that stuff. And yeah, so we've got that mailing list. So if you want to sign up for that, you will know where the Artcasters is going to broadcast from. And as far as where you can find me at Serkworks.com. Serkworks pretty much everywhere on YouTube. And I have an online store, and I've got some new products available. I've got T-shirts now. So if you either go to Serkworks.com and find the shop link, or just go to MadScienceSupplyCompany.com, and that'll take you directly to the store. So even if you're not interested in buying anything, if you just want to check it out, because I got some cool stuff there, and you can kind of see how I set up the store. And I'll probably be doing a video in the future on tips and things on how to set up a good store and make it look nice and all that stuff with descriptions and all that stuff. But anyway, that'll be on the YouTube. So that's where you can find me and my stuff.
All right, cool. So we will see you guys next week.